So yes, Kiana James has qualified for the Elimination Chamber, and I for one didn't have that on my bingo card. So yeah, I mean, I thought the match itself was solid. Really great spots. I think that Kiana James was made to look like a million bucks here. To be fair, she was in the Elimination Contender match, but with Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax. So for all the money that Charlotte Flair was going to be the odds-on favourite to progress here, especially with Alexa Bliss being in there as well, them kind of teasing that fallout and that dynamic. But slightly more outside chance, but still within the realms of possibility. You could imagine Nia Jax in that environment as well. But yeah, never thought they were going to do the swerve with Kiara and James, but absolutely overjoyed that they did. I really do. Like I said, I think that it's a breath of fresh air. I think that it's really shows a real kind of experimental bit with WWE, and yeah, I'm all for it. So yeah, I mean, there was a spot where it felt like the latter half of this match was kind of almost a little bit, felt like it had gone into extra time a little bit. There was a spot where Charlotte Flair, it looked to have got the win by hitting this Spanish fly, I think, on Kiana James, and there was this really like 1, 2, ooh, or that's how it was like kind of sold. And looking at it in real time, I was like, I'm pretty sure that was a free count ref. But you know, there were people in the front row kind of saying that it was a free count. I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched it back. I haven't inspected it, but too closely, but I'm not too interested. You know, if Keanu was a little late kicking out here, you know, it happens. You know what I mean? Especially when you're doing such a high risk move like that. It's easy to get win knocked out of you or something like that. So obviously it happened on NXT with. I mean. Yeah, I mean, it could have happened, you know what I mean? But so I don't look too deep into it deeply, do you know what I mean? It's a bit like when there's a little bit of what people kind of call a botching, so there's, well, you know what I mean? And then it's like these are top athletes going live, do you know what I mean? Invariably there are going to be mistakes that are going to happen, do you know what I mean? These are phenomenal athletes, but they're still human beings at the end of the day, and things can always go wrong, do you know what I mean? And I don't think I feel like we're kind of like robbing ourselves of something if we just sort of put ourselves on those spots under a microscope a little bit and go, oh, well, you know, what was that intentional and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? But yeah, it did feel like after that it had gone into extra time a little bit. It felt like that we had a natural conclusion to that end, and it was sort of the latter half. Everything that happened after that was a bit of a tag on. You know, maybe that was just me. But yeah, like I said, I thought that it was the right decision in the end to have that swerve with Kiana James. You know, why not take a bold swing like that? The whole dynamic between Charlotte and Alexa, you can still tell that story, as we saw a bit later on in the backstage segment between them. You know, you can still tease a little bit fallout around the Elimination Chamber. Furthermore, obviously we had Jade Cargill doing another promo here, and Charlotte Flair coming out and again teasing the potential contenders match there. You know, in terms of star power, I think it makes sense. Obviously, with the absence of Bianca Belair and all that, I think that it's sort of Charlotte Flair is, at least in terms of star power, probably one of your best woman on the roster to kind of go for that. Yeah, so you know, I think all of that maybe also ties in to where, I mean, if you were going to go with a feud, you would probably still want to keep Charlotte Flair babyface because otherwise it's heel versus heel, which and so I would say that probably I could still see it being Alexa turning on Charlotte Flair. At some point, and that kind of causing the fallout. While we're talking about fallouts, fallouts, we also had we've also kind of had a bit of a tease with maybe a fallout with the MFTs because we had a backstage segment here also with Shinsuke Nakamura basically taking the leaf out of CM Punk's book and approaching Tama Tonga and being like, these guys are holding you back and all of that. Yeah, so maybe there's a little tease here, but yeah, basically, I mean, if we rewind back to the beginning of this episode, all in all, I felt that this episode of SmackDown started off a little bit too routine for me, a bit too Groundhog Day for me, and I felt like it really kind of started to pick up more momentum and started to really sizzle the more that it went on. So I mean, we had basically we had opening it up with Cody Rhodes promo. This was interrupted by Jacob Fatu, who basically came out and was like, look, you know as well as I do that the only reason why you're here talking about the Elimination Chamber is because Drew came out and interfered, and then we basically had Nick Aldis coming out to basically say he'd given Drew McIntyre the night off because he didn't want any trouble, although then obviously Drew showed up anyway in the stands in the audience. So the Cody Rhodes. So obviously, like Cody Rhodes, Jacob Fatu, and Drew McIntyre are still very much entangled in this sort of like freeway, and I kind of feel like this segment didn't really move the needle. I'm still kind of not really any closer to kind of knowing exactly when they're going to pull the trigger on this triple threat and how they're actually going to go. It was just sort of, yeah, it was one of those where it just felt like it was going through the motions again. Again, we then went into the match between Ilya Dragunov and Tama Tonga. This was following on from a match like a couple of weeks ago, I think, where it was, where basically Carmelo Hayes had given Dragunov a rematch for the US title, and then basically the MFTs came out. It ended up with the MFTs beating down Dragunov. And again, this kind of just happened again. We had Tama Tonga picking up a win after the MFTs got intervened. We basically had, I mean, this time admittedly Dragunov, I guess you kind of have to say brought it on himself. I mean, he kind of with no kind of regard for his own self-preservation, just attacked Solo Sikoa knowing that he was totally outnumbered. This kind of led into kind of a little bit of a madness in the mid card, because we had a number of other people come out. We had Macedona come out to try and help Ilya Dragunov, and he ended up getting taken out. I think we had Apollo Crews coming out to help, and he ended up getting taken out. So the MFTs have got themselves quite a few potential enemies here, and then you obviously had the obligatory Wyatt Six little promo kind of addressing them as well, because obviously this feud has been going on for what feels like longer than Roman Reigns' title reign, so it just feels like this is but I mean the whole exchange here did set up a one-on-one between Solo Sikoa and Uncle Howdy next week. So, there is We had an intriguing backstage segment also with Cody and Sami Zayn backstage. Basically, we essentially had that Sami Zayn essentially saying that he was disappointed in Cody and he felt that Cody had kind of like screwed him over a little bit because Drew had got involved and Cody had basically taken advantage of it. We had Cody basically come in. He had basically kind of said that Cody had never really been in that sort of position where he's just tried to do the good thing, and Cody was basically like, I've been that guy, I've tried to do the right thing and it's ended up screwing me over, so I was just kind of learned to do what is basically needed. I've learned that lesson and you haven't, Sammy, and that's the reason why you haven't won the title before, because you've tried to be too nice, just like I once was. So you had a nice little bit of spice between these two backstage. So that's a nice little tease there. I'm all for that. I'm intrigued to see what kind of develops there. In the men's elimination qualifying match, we had Carmelo Hayes, Damian Priest, and Trick Williams. This was another enticing affair for me. I was quietly confident that Trick Williams was going to be the obvious choice here, but again, like the women's, I could have seen it go either way. I didn't think that. I think that you could have had somebody like Carmelo Hayes in here, similar to with Javon Evans. You could have given him all the crazy spots, but like I said, it's sort of a bit. Maybe a bit excess because you've already got Javon Evans in there to do all those crazy spots. Carmelo Hayes is the US champion, so he doesn't really need the Elimination Chamber. So that's why I was kind of taking him out. And then it's sort of like, again, Trick Williams just seemed the obvious choice because he was the freshest. He was the one who's getting the push, which, by the way, the crowd was totally popping for Trick Williams during this match. So it's great to see that he's basically ticked off another element of a caliber there in kind of getting that rapport going with the crowd. But yeah, I mean, there was always like a little bit of doubt in my mind because obviously we had Damian Priest here, who we know is always Elimination Chamber material as well. So there was like a little bit of a 20% chance of going, maybe not. But yeah, like I said, solid match. We had Rhea Ripley and Julia here. This ended up being a disqualification because Nia Jackson, Lash Legend, got involved. This was kind of like continuing the build for next week when they take on Rio for the tag team titles. We had Io Sky coming out to Rhea Ripley's aid, and they ended up getting the upper hand of them. I mean, it's not as sacred in wrestling as maybe it once was, but it has started made me a little bit afraid as a Rio fan that maybe Nia Jackson, Lash Legend are winning next week. I'm not quite ready for it, I don't think, but yeah, there's a little bit of apprehension going into that. I'll be honest with you. So yeah, we had also a backstage segment between Obafemi. He had again earlier in the show, he had beaten down Wilson against him as he did last week, I think. So this is what I mean, like this because with that segment and the stuff with Jacob Fatu and Cody and Drew McIntyre and the Ilya Dragunov and MFT stuff, because all of that was kind of like earlier on in the episode. This is what I meant by it started off being quite Groundhog Day, it felt, and it slowly started to find its momentum and sizzle as it went on. So yeah, later on here we had Obafemi backstage with The Miz, we had The Miz basically offering to kind of like coach Obafemi and show him the ropes. So Obafemi was like, "You want to show me ropes? Okay, I'll go and talk to Nick Aldis and and listen, have a match." So yeah, obviously, you know, this is a role that The Miz, obviously, we know that this is a role that The Miz provides now. He's just there to kind of get the new talent over. Obviously, he's been kind of like done that for as long as he can remember now, and you know, Obafemi is just his next client. So here we are, you know. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we've obviously got to find out obligatory feud that all newcomers have to have with The Miz, like it's kind of like rites of passage at this point. Yeah, and then we had the main event between Randy Orton and Aleister Black. Again, you know, I thought that this was a solid match. I was a little let down by it obviously ended in the ending in kind of like shenanigans with Drew McIntyre getting involved and hitting Randy. Although I do admit that it adds a little bit of intrigue kind of thing between Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. I'm intrigued to see how that goes. But yeah, just with them being with Drew McIntyre so being already entangled with Cody Rhodes and Jacob for two, I kind of like think, you know, do we need another one? Is it starting to get a little bit too convoluted? I mean, you could do a fatal four-way for the title. I think that's a one way you could really add to this. So yeah, maybe that's a play that we're gonna get here. Who knows? So yeah, maybe that's a potential. So we'll see. But yeah, so like I said, I was intrigued. But yeah, like I said, I'm never like, maybe it's just me, but this is just my personal preference. I'm not always usually a big fan when kind of like main events end up in kind of like a bit of a throwaway type thing. But yeah, again, it was what it did do, like I said, I think that it did add some intrigue by bringing Randy Orton into the whole Drew McIntyre feud. And it did add to, like I said, we had already got that big swerve this episode with Kiana James qualifying for the Elimination Chamber. You could say that, obviously, I guess you have to say that Aleister Black being Randy Orton here was another somewhat surprise. So yeah, it seemed to be like that they were kind of pulling out a few swerves in this episode of SmackDown. So overall, like I said, I'm going to give this episode of SmackDown a thumbs up. Like I said, I think it started off very routine, a little bit too repetitive. I felt like it was kind of trying to pad the 3-hour runtime out too much. But like I said, I think once it kind of got to kind of like halfway, it really got some momentum and it really started to sizzle, I think. And yeah, we really got some spicy stuff here. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts about this episode of SmackDown was, and you know, what your own little fan theories are maybe going forward towards Elimination Chamber and the road to WrestleMania. You know, all of our fun geeky stuff. Let me know down in the comment section, and as always, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.